My conceptual framework is based off of looking at my discipline policy through a critical race theory lens. I want to search in my policy for those places that are currently equitable, but also the places that we could do better in. So the things that are missing. So I pulled readings from this current course, and I also pulled readings from 605 into my framework. So I'm going to start with the foundation. So I wanted to look at the foundation of the policy to see how old it is, but also to look at the policyholders themselves. So for the age, you have research by Lynn and Hilton that talk about that CRT itself has been around and there's research on it. However, it may not be implemented. It might be being like ignored or neglected as a form of research specifically for education. So, and also the CRT says that if researchers would just think about their own racial thinking, that could totally reshape the whole educational research. And that will also change our policies as well to make it more equitable. Next part I wanted to talk about was policyholders themselves. Are they white policyholders, like for Gilborn, that kind of send this message of domination? And that sends us to the discourse. What are they saying? Is there a dominant language that they are sending? So this comes from Solozano and Yoso and Basil and Lopez, where they talk about that when those policyholders are from those dominant groups or the white policyholders, they can send their own use of ideology, their own set of beliefs. They try to justify their position, but also you have them putting those practices into place, and CRT kind of opens that up and shows us what practices are and dominant views are in place that may be invisible to us if we're not paying attention. The other one is the authority and power of these policyholders. So CRT allows us to unveil that power and privilege so we can see what is going on inside this policy. That comes from Iversion and Bracey. So there's this power imbalance, so that's what we're looking for in this policy as well. The next part that I'm looking at when it comes to the conceptual framework is whiteness. So according to Basil and Lopez, CRT suggests that race has a construct in its placement in the white over color hierarchy, okay, where it accommodates that whiteness. And according to Gilborn, one of the most powerful and dangerous aspects of whiteness is that many, possibly the majority of white people, have this totally unawareness of the whiteness construction. So they don't realize how they are already contributing to the inequities that are already there. And this is a tenet of CRT. Also looking at race subordination at the institutional level by Crenshaw. And Yoso, again, up here, talks about race curriculum exposes that white privilege. Next part is the deficits. So looking at what's missing. So looking at from a problem solving instead of a co-constructing to see if this policy incorporates multiple stakeholders or if it's only incorporating one person, and it's the policyholders. Okay. And so Freire talks about problem solving. It distorts the totality of human experience by reducing it to those dimensions which are amenable to treatment as mere difficulties to be solved. Okay. Is it sending that message? That's the question. So colorblind. So it's realizing that when you hear the word all students, it's talking about how you're not even thinking about race. That can be a negative and a positive. So you don't see color, you don't want to see color, you're trying to be diverse, but in the same aspect, you're not seeing it as a challenge either, so something that needs to be questioned. So according to Delgado and Stefanik, that's the issue of being colorblind, that you're not even recognizing the race. So that's also a tenet of CRT. So it's also looking at what is focusing on what's broken instead of what's working. So that comes from Basil and Lopez. That whiteness can cause policymakers to develop a negative narrative of people of color. And they may not, like we said earlier, and may not even realize it. So I also have deficit coming down to culture. So culture is not all throughout this policy. I know it's kind of part of my analyst, but it seems to be missing. So I wanted to see what parts of culture are missing in this policy and what parts are not. So cultural from Gay, we're looking at culture responsive teaching, but I also think you can take that and look at your policy. So we're looking at issues of race, class, ethnicity, gender, and we need to make sure we're including multiple kinds of knowledges and perspectives. And that kind of leads into Fernandez, where he talks about, everybody has a story that they can contribute, and those stories, should be heard throughout this policy. So you have students that have a voice, teachers, community, and parents, and that makes up ultimately the stakeholders also. So all those stakeholders have cultures that they can bring into this policy. So this is according to Burnell and Arson and Laughter about the students being recognized for their knowledge and the cultures and their languages. They should be valued throughout our schools, and that includes in our policies. Also in teachers, that teachers need to also be critically reflecting on the challenges that they can see in their own positionality. So they need to make sure they're looking at any biases that they may have formed, any stereotypes that they have been, looking at, maybe the way they were raised. So that needs to take place, and they need to realize how their biases, their stereotypes can impact the students in a negative or positive way. In the community, according to CRT, you have the community has a wealth of strengths that can help people of colors and communities of colors, and can help empower people as well. So according to Yoso, we need to make sure that we are incorporating that culture and that community needs to be incorporating into our policy. Parents. So parents play a critical role into teaching in the success of our students in our schools. And so they need to be also included into this policy. Their role is very valuable. So according to Sleater and Ladson and Billings, they need to be incorporated into, because they are critical to holding that culture responsive pedagogy. So we need to make sure that we are celebrating everyone's culture, the communities, the parents, the teachers, what they bring into the classroom, and the students. So that's what I'm looking into this policy. This is what I'm looking for. I put the arrows because these are like parts of a discipline policy that should be there. Some are in this discipline policy, but some are not. So it's a circulation, it's a cycle. So all these things, and I could have included more. I could have gone and had probably 5 more things that should be wrapped around discipline policy. But I wanted to focus on these key 4 things: what's missing, the culture, the whiteness, and the foundation and the policyholders themselves, and what message they are sending.